Alright, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Little Man, Big Conversations. I'm, of course, your host, Little Man, aka the Flashman, aka James, and I want to welcome you back to another episode. Man, the responses we've been getting these last couple of weeks, hell, even these last 2 months, can you believe it? 2 months already with this podcast. What started out as a little hobby has now turned into a where are they now of pro wrestling in and around Queensland and Australia. I'm finding people, models, actors, entrepreneurs, entertainers of all shapes and walks of life that want to come on here and share their stories. And hey, you guys get to have a little bit of info, a little bit of peek behind the curtain and find out what these people are like and how they created their perceptions and their personas and everything in between. Which brings me to today. In the history I've been doing my wrestling, there is a lot of happy memories I have, and one of the people that I got to share a ton of happy memory with is my guest today. My guest today is someone that I had the pleasure of knowing when I first stepped out of my home base at IPW in 2013. I was lost in the professional wrestling world. I didn't know where I was going. I made the trip 2 hours north up to the sunny coast. I met this man. We had a lot of fun together in and outside the ring. You may know him as the bad friend, but he's always been a good guy to me. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Ricky Rembrandt. Ricky, how the hell are you, man?
Hey, Flash. Long time no speak, man.
Man, it's been a minute. We were saying just before we got onto this podcast, man, that I think the last time I saw you was maybe close to, man, I want to say 2 years ago.
It has to be. It was Venom, and we had our blow-off match, and that was a lot of stuff's happened since then. So we got a lot to talk about. Yeah. You and I have kept in contact pretty much close to as often as we can since last physically seeing each other. But for those that don't know how we know each other, I think it's kind of obvious as we've just sort of stated right there and then. But for those that don't know how we know each other, take me back. I remember meeting you in 2013, and I came up to what was then known as QCW Sunny Coast. And I remember meeting a bunch of young, up-and-coming guys, and you were one of them, man. Do you remember that day, and how was it for you? Okay, so my memory's shot. But I do remember. We were training at the Maroochydore State School, I believe. Mm-hmm. And my trainer at the time, Jamie, said, I've got a couple of guys coming up from IPW, and I want you to be welcoming and talk to them and learn as much as you can. So we were like, cool. And I knew of you and Matt, sweet ass, beforehand because I do my research. But I was like, yeah, sweet. All right, we've got some new minds coming in, because at that time we needed tutelage from other people. Like you learn lots of different things from different people. So we were excited to have someone else come up. But I remember getting to training, and you and Matt were there, and I saw him, and he's a big fella, and then I saw you, and you're a little fella, and I was like, all right, let's see what they got. And dude, the rest is history. Like, we hit it off, and I don't know. I felt like it was an instant friendship. I don't know about you. I don't know if you had to work at it.
No, I remember that, coming to that school, and I remember sitting at the back of that room and Jamie coming over to us and saying, hey, boys, thanks for coming up. This is what we're doing here tonight. If you guys want to take part or pitch in at any point, please feel free. But obviously, if you guys don't want to, I totally respect that. But I will introduce you guys, pretty much at the end or whatever. And we're like, yeah, cool, man, you do your thing. We'll just sit back and watch. And there's a lot of young guys there. And I remember that training session, as soon as we rocked up, a lot of that training session was just a bunch of the guys and girls doing pretty much just finishing moves. There was power bombs, there was choke slams, there was Boston crabs, there was figure fours. And I'm sitting there going, man, okay, so when do we get to the training? And it kind of felt like these guys were kind of, I don't know if everyone knew who we were, and respectfully, I appreciate the fact that if they didn't know, that's totally understandable. But I feel like a lot of them thought that there was like this dad and his son had come to watch training, and they're like, yeah, let's show all these cool moves, and, look, wrestling's fun. And little did they know that combined at that point, I think Matt and I had about, what would have been about combined like 20, 21 years. Matt obviously outranked me. And I remember the look on everyone's faces when Jamie at the end introduced us to the training group and said, oh, yeah, Flash has, I think, 5 years experience at that stage, and Matt here has close to 13 years. And the look of everyone's faces just shut their eyes, and they're like, oh, no. As if to say, I feel so embarrassed. Yeah. But I remember that day, man, and I remember we quickly joined up shortly thereafter, and it wasn't too long into it that before you and I started doing one chapter of our famous feud together. Can you remember the time when we first were put into a room and said, hey, I think these guys should work together, and we came up with the idea for a feud?
I honestly don't remember whose decision it was to throw us together, but I've got a record in front of me of sort of where it sort of started, like match wise.
Yeah.
So it was July of 2013 we actually teamed up for the first time.
Yep.
And that's when it all started. So we teamed up, and I think, if I remember correctly, the result of that was we had a malfunction in the match, and then that led on to a rivalry between the two of us. So I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know who put us together. Maybe that was probably Jamie's idea, obviously, because he talked to you and Matt a lot, because obviously he knew you guys. And yeah, so I was never sure whether you wanted to work with me or whether it was just, hey, maybe these guys can do well together, or but yeah, that's how it started. We started as a team, and this is what I love about the rivalry that we formed as well. Like, it was so sort of, I don't want to say ambiguous, but we blurred the line between who was right and who was wrong in our rivalry. You know what I mean? Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
So yeah, and I just loved it because, like, we started off as a team. We had a malfunction that caused us to lose, and then we were like, you know what, it's your fault. And you're like, no, it's your fault. So then the following month we had our first one-on-one match. That was August of 2013.
Yep.
I won that match, just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
But that was actually, it's a funny thing. See, I think people look at what we do on this level, and especially back then, just how grassroots it was, how small scale everything was. So you think people look at that and they go, oh yeah, he won a title or whatever. It's not that big of a deal. But to me, no matter what scale it is, it was always a big deal. So that night that we had our first one-on-one match, we wrestled each other. I made you submit by the looks of this. And then the same night, later that night, I won my first title. So, like, that was a pretty big night for me.
Oh, hell yeah, man. Yeah, I remember that night. Yeah, that was a fantastic night. That was when we traveled. I think we traveled up north, and we were nearby, I think it was your hometown. And
it was Karoi, yeah. It was middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we did that
it was
show.
Good. Just a tiny little hole in this tiny little country town. It was good.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it, man. That's the beauty of traveling the roads, and that's the fun of independence. You never know what you're gonna see and where you're gonna end up, but the fun is in the journey. I always like doing those drives up the road and getting to the venue and trying to suss everything out. But yeah, I remember. What was it? I think we teamed up because I thought I had injured myself. There was a freak sort of accident in a match that I had, I think, about a month or so earlier, and I'd come back. And I think we had all agreed that, hey, let's turn this reality into fiction. And I came back and I teamed with you, and I think it was something along the lines of we'd lost, but it was you trying to protect me. And
that's right. Yeah, because your neck was hurt. Because you had that nasty fall. That's right. Maybe we should tell that story. That was brutal.
Oh, okay.
So tell it from your perspective, man. Honestly, because like you lived it. I remember seeing it, and I remember having the following match and seeing the Ambos rock up with the stretcher and everything, and I was like, holy shit, like what's going on? But yeah, so
it was crazy, man.
Tell your side.
So what had happened, man? I got up to the building. We were there. They were there pretty early, like a few hours early, and I was working with my opponent, and yes, it was Rabies, and we had come up with an idea where he was going to run up the ropes, and I was going to sort of pop up out of nowhere, and I was going to drop kick him in the shoulder, allowing him the move to the sensation as if to say, like, I've used all the little power that I could. I've clipped him at just the right time, and he's then going to do a backflip in midair. Like, so I'm going to hit him on one side. I'm going to leave enough room for him to do. It's pretty much like a moonsault backflip and just come down face first and take a front bump. And I'm going to land next to him on my back, as if I've taken him out, like in sort of mid-run. So we get to that moment. He runs off the ropes. I come up for the kick, and I have the tape of that moment. And what had happened, it was just a freak occurrence. Basically, as I jumped and I've gone to hit him, he's caught the move across his sternum, like pretty much shoulder sternum area. However, as I've come through, instead of facing me face on, he's slightly turned on his right side, so his right shoulder and right positioning is facing me. And once that's happened, he's then gone to backflip, and I'm in midair. So he's now backflipped my legs that are still in midair from this drop kick. So he's connected with my legs, and we've both done a double backflip at the same time. He's landed on his face, and I've landed crunch on the back of my neck. And I remember hitting there, and I remember laying there, and I had that gong sensation. And I started to get really freaked out because I'd seen a lot of those wrestling documentaries where, everyone that's hurt their neck or done something bad, they said, there's a ton of weight on my neck. I hear a gong, I hear a sound, I hear a flash of light. And I had the gong sort of noise in my ears, and I went, oh, okay. And I remember lying there for what felt like ages, and I grabbed the back of my neck, and I was just lying there face down. And immediately I'm thinking to myself, damn it, no. And I'm like, all right, cool. Just move your leg. And half my body's going, no, I don't want to move. I don't want to hurt myself anymore. And the other half of me is going, just move your leg. If you can move your leg, then it's not bad. We can get through this. And as the famous saying in wrestling goes, the show must go on. So I finally mustered up the inner courage and worked out a negotiation with my brain that went, hey, I'm okay. If we hurt ourselves more, then that's on me. And my brain went, all right, it's your body. So I remember in the tape, you just see my
match.
Yeah. So I'm lying on the floor.
You actually got up and you finished the match. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm lying on the floor. I've gone, let's move my leg. And my right leg's gone, boop, and come up and fallen back down. I'm like, oh, okay. So then we got up. And the damn finish of the match was an elbow drop from, I think, the second or the top rope. And I'm going, man, I've got to do this move. And I did the move, and it was just, it just made it feel 10 times worse. I hit the pin, and I just lied there. And the funny thing was, the referee told me earlier that day, he said to me, hey, man, I'm really excited about refereeing the whole show tonight. And I said, yeah, why is that, man? And he said, because if anything goes wrong tonight, I've literally just finished my first aid course. And I went, well, fingers crossed that nothing goes bad tonight. And then the person that has something go bad to them that night is me. And it's like third match out. And I jinxed myself. Yeah. I should have never agreed to saying to him, yeah, well, I hope nothing goes wrong, because maybe it wouldn't have happened. But that's what happened. And I'm lying there in the ring. The ref comes over and he's looking at me and he's like, you're all right? And I said to him, F, no, I'm not all right. I don't think I can move. And he goes, what? I'm like, I'm being serious, man. This isn't an angle. This isn't a storyline. I don't think I can move. You need to get some help. And he just froze. Like, he was like shocked, as you would be, being like, dude, what? And I'm like, I can't move, man. Tell Jamie, tell someone, bring someone out here, because I cannot move. And this isn't a joke. I began to freak out. And I think they said a few faces out there. And I laid there for a bit. And then I can't remember who everyone that was in the ring that had come to assist me. So I'm not going to name names and take away from people that may or may not have been there. But I remember there was a few of them. They helped me backstage. They laid me on the locker room floor. And as I laid there on that locker room floor, I was staring up at that ceiling. And I remember getting really upset. Like, I remember being really scared and upset. And yeah, then the ambulance was called and I got carted out of there. I had a scan. Thankfully, nothing was broken. I had to do a bit of rehab. And yeah, so I thought, well, everyone has seen this happen that is of fans following that federation. I think I'm all right, but it's happened, and I don't want to ignore the fact that, hey, this has happened. Let's make the best of a bad situation. As I said in my first episode, there's always a bigger positive to a negative situation. Negative was I had an accident. It wasn't on my opponent. He made sure he messaged me. He took, really made sure that I was all right. It was just one of those freak occurrences. Even coming out of there, he was messaging me and making sure I was okay. And it was totally not on his fault at all. It was just one of those things that happens. But a lot of support coming out of that. But I thought, hey, I don't want to ignore that this has happened because it's happened, and let's take something that has happened and turn it into something or a storyline that hasn't happened. So I remember teaming with you, and the concept was that I had come back with a fur coat and an arrogance and the fact of I'm invincible. And you being one of the big baby faces at the time in that company, the concept was that you wanted to sort of be the good guy here and go, oh, look, my mate's here, he's a good dude. We've just got back into the mix, and I want to make sure that nothing goes wrong. So I want to look after him. And I was like, yeah, cool. Ricky and Flash teaming up. This is awesome. Two good guys here. And the idea behind it was that something was happening in the match, and either you sacrificed yourself or you did something to save me that caused the ending. I can't remember which way it was. But essentially the concept was like, why did you do that? And you said, well, I didn't want you to get hurt. And my approach to that was, well, you don't believe in me. So it was two sides to one coin where it was like, no, it's not that I don't believe in you, man. I don't want you to get hurt. No, you're a non-believer, and everyone else is a non-believer. So we did that tag match. You sacrificed yourself, or something happened with the ending where I either broke it up or you broke it up, or there was something there that you did in good favor to save me. I took it the wrong way, and that began our feud. We had the match after the next following month, and that same night you won the belt. Then we picked it up again a couple of years later because I'd left, and I had left to begin my own chapter alongside Sweet Assassin and Scott. It was around that time when I thought, hey, I've taken some time off here to do this. I'm not wrestling as active as what I once was, but I'm starting to feel good. I reached out. I'd come back up to Sunny Coast, and the idea was put into place of, hey, let's reignite this feud again. However, let's swap it around. I was the arrogant, I wouldn't really say bad guy, but I was the arrogant friend that just wasn't getting along with you in the first instance of our feud. And in the second part, I'd come back, you were getting beat up, I made the save, but this time you took it the wrong way. And then the roles were reversed. We did this whole spiel where you were mad at me, and that culminated in another match between us. Then I remember us going down to Venom, and that's where we had our third and final, and I haven't been in the ring with you since.
Yeah, so we had our first little section where we met each other. It was like, we respected each other. We had a match based on that. Then, like you said, you got injured. You came back, and then we sort of started off again. But like you said, you took it the wrong way because I was trying to protect you. And so I don't need your protection. I'm good to go. And that arrogance and that sort of heel persona that you brought, it was really it was interesting dynamic because it was like I was just trying to do the right thing. You weren't necessarily a bad guy, but you had a bad attitude coming back, and then that just spiraled out of control until we had another match. Yeah, and then we went our separate ways again, like you said, and then QPW started up, which was what you were saying before, and I came in and I did a lot of training with you guys, and then afterwards, like you said, then this is the stuff that I really like because this is when I first got a chance to be a proper heel. And you came back and we started the thing and you saved me from a beat down and I said, hey, look, thanks, but I didn't ask for your help and I don't need it. Mm-hmm. And then from there, my attitude changed and I had the bad attitude and you were just like, hey, come on, I'm just trying to be a good friend, right? And now this is the thing I love and I'm going to make this a thing down the track again. But the good friend, bad friend thing has stuck with me ever since. It's just something that like, it resonated with some people. Some people just really loved it and they still bring it up to this day. They're like, hey, it's the good friend or hey, it's the bad friend. And I just don't think it's ever going to go away. And nor should it, like it could be an entire gimmick, if it could be a whole thing that we can just kick off again. But yeah, so what happened was we were building to a big final blow-off match in QCW, but at that time the company ended up folding. So for personal reasons, Jamie had to close up, and he was just going to shut it down and not even do a final show or anything. Just, sorry guys, close the doors. But we convinced him that we wanted to do a farewell show. And it was essentially going to be sort of like tying off rivalries or doing tributes to all the good stuff that we did over the years in that promotion. And I remember we were set to have a match, and then creative changed and whoever was running the show changed. It was a real turbulent time. Like a lot of people weren't on the same page at that time. And it was decided that I was going to go on and have a match with two other guys as sort of like, let's redo the best match that came out of that promotion. So, and then you were sort of pushed to the side, and that never really sat well with me. And I always felt really bad about it, because really, and in retrospect, after the way everything went down, you and I should have had our final one-on-one match then, finish the story properly, but we never got to do it. So not sure exactly how long it was after that, but we got a chance to work together at Venom Pro Wrestling. I've done a few shows down there, not a lot, but when that opportunity came up, I jumped on it, and I was like, well, this is good, because I'm weird like that. I like to have closure, like even if it's just so that I can go back later and go, see, look, we did finish it, like we did. It wasn't just left open in the air. Like no one's going to remember except me or you or maybe a few other people. But I felt good that we got to close it off. And getting back in the ring with you then was just as easy as it has been every other time. And I'm happy we got to do it. Watching it back, it's not as good as I remember. There was some really great bits in that match, but then going on and learning what I've learned since then about psychology and what to do when and what not to do, I can pinpoint the exact moment it sort of went a little bit awry, and then we brought it back around. We finished it nicely, and it was good. But I mean, that's just nitpicking on my behalf. But it was a nice way to close the chapter, I think. And if we were to open it up again, obviously you can just turn that page, start a whole new chapter, and it'll be like seamless. Yeah. But if it never happened again, I'm glad that we got to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, likewise, man. And I'm hopeful for the fact that we do get to do something again, because it is one of those things where it just happened to click at the right time with the right people in the right scenario. But yeah, I mean, I feel the same, man. If we don't get to do it again, hey, that was a fun little back and forth we got to do from both sides of the coin. One side you were happy, and one side you were bad, and likewise for me. But you mentioned earlier, and this is going to be the best transition in history. Speaking of opening up, let's rewind the hands of time. That's how we know each other. That's the work that we had to do together. Take me back. Where did it all begin for you? Where were you born? Were you born where you are now? Have you always lived there, or have you been traveling around?
I was born in Queensland, so I was born in Brisbane, I believe, and I've stayed here my entire life. I've left the state barely a handful of times, not even that. Right. So I'm Sunshine Coast through and through. Yeah. So I moved up Sunny Coast way probably when I was about 2 years old. Okay. And grew up there out in the sticks, out at a place called Kinkin, and then we moved to Karoi, which is still a small little town, but a big step up in civilization compared to what I was used to. I was about 9 years old, and I went through high school there. I lived in that house for 20-odd years, and right now I'm in Glasshouse Mountains, so I'm just south of the Sunshine Coast, but I'm still in the same area. But I'm always around,
So you've always been a Sunshine Coast local. So you obviously grew up, you went to school there. When was it for you? And before I say that, so you grew up there and you went through high school. What was the schooling experience like for you being a Sun Coast boy? Were you at the same school, or did you travel to different suburbs and change schools, or did you stay at the same one?
Well, I had three main schools that I went to. So up until year 4, I went up to year 4 in Kinkin. There was very few students. I barely wore shoes. It was that kind of school. It was real country.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, back in the day before there was all these safety things and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, look, a brown snake. Better put my shoes on. But
boring.
So that was the early part. Yeah, right. Hey, look, the principal's got a shotgun out to get rid of that hazard. Okay, whatever. But that was the early years. Then I went to the Croy Primary, and that was a bit bigger of an experience. More options, like facility wise and things like that, and more students and stuff. From there, I went to Noosa District Straight High School, which is also in Karoi. So it was really just going from one school to the next, but staying in the same town. Most of the people I went to school with came up with me, so I knew nearly everybody in that year anyway. So that was good. My primary school experience was always positive. I don't remember being bullied too badly or anything like that to the point where it ruined things for me. I think actually listening to your first podcast and saying that you have an affinity for comedy and stuff, I think I did too, because anytime anyone wanted to fight me or pick on me, I think I just made them laugh and they went, oh, this guy's not so bad. Whatever, we'll leave him alone.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool, right?
It is, yeah, in a lot of different ways. But I think I was lucky in that respect, because I know that a lot of people growing up did have trouble with that kind of thing, and I can't say that I did. So I'm happy about that. High school was the same. I didn't have any overtly negative experiences. I wasn't a straight A student, but I was a nice medium ground. I did my work and I got through it, and I've always had a problem with deadlines and things like that. So it was always, last minute cram, but school was cool. I didn't mind it. I was glad to be out of it when I'd finished, and it wasn't until I was a bit older after that I realized, hey, stay in school as long as you can. But it was all good, Sunny Coast is so cruisy. Like, it's always had that laid back kind of lifestyle. And I think that's why I found it so hard to leave here to the point where I haven't. So
the schooling went well. You graduated. What did you do after graduation? Was it around this time that you were exposed to wrestling, or did you discover it later on?
Well, wrestling has been a part of my household for as long as I can remember. So I tell the story a lot, and it's just to give you an idea of like the time frame. Yeah. So I remember being very young and picking up a VHS. Now, kids at home won't know what a VHS is, but when we were little, there was these things called VHS, right? Anyway, so I picked up this tape and I was like, oh, what's this? WrestleMania 3 had been recorded onto this tape. And I was like, oh, wow. And I remember going, sick, WrestleMania. So at that point, I already was interested in wrestling, like enough that I was like, wow, I found this tape. I'm going to put it in. When I put this tape in, it had been recorded over again, because you could do that with VHS. Mm-hmm. And it was a darts championship. My dad had always played darts and he'd recorded over it. And I was gutted. I was like, darts, not WrestleMania. Okay. So that's one of the earliest memories of wrestling that I can recall. But my dad was always a wrestling fan, and I think we've always just watched it. So growing up, I can't remember. Did you say you were a WCW guy in your opening podcast?
Yeah, the first imagery I had of pro wrestling was WCW, and it was Hulk Hogan hitting Goldberg in the back with a chair, 16,000 people or maybe even more reacting like this was the greatest thing in the world. And I thought there was a damn police riot at my local shopping center. I had never seen wrestling before, and I had no idea why 16,000 people were cheering on this man being beaten. That was my first imagery of it. That was the first time I'd ever seen wrestling, and the channel was quickly changed. It was changed to the news, and I asked what that was, and I was living with my dad, and he was like, he's like, it's nothing. And I'm like, is it a news story? And he's like, no, it's definitely not a news story. But I never lost that imagery from my head. And that was my first exposure to it. That was the first time I'd ever seen it as a kid. And it's stuck with me ever since. So, okay, you got the tape of WrestleMania 3. And
never got to watch
it. And it wasn't even on there. It was a damn darts video. So when was the first time? So you've been screwed. You've been screwed over from WrestleMania 3 to watch damn darts. So when is it the first time that you get to sit down and actually appreciate wrestling? Was it after high school, or did you do something after high school that maybe led you back to the world of wrestling? What was after high school like for you?
Wrestling was around even before that. So I remember the tape. That's my earliest memory. But I was a WCW guy too. That's why I asked you, was it WCW that you were speaking about? And I remember things like World War III and, Nash winning that, going on to beat Goldberg with the help of Scott Hall and that cattle prod and all that stuff. I remember that very vividly. So I was always a WCW guy up until things sort of went awry for them. And the product kept changing, and every other week it was like a reset button, and it started to lose me a little bit. But that was also the same time that I met a friend of mine, a guy named Tim, and we hit it off. I'm pretty sure we must have still been in maybe year 7 or something, like at the end of primary school. And he goes, "Oh, well, I've got the Royal Rumble on pay-per-view," and this was the year 2000. So it would have been just after I finished year 7 going into high school. So it was the same Rumble that Cactus Jack fought Triple H in that street fight.
2000?
And the one, 2000.
Yep.
The one with the taxi cab hanging from the rafters. Yeah. So I went and watched that with him. And that sort of, I went, oh, that's right. This is WWF at the time. And I remember thinking, this is the alternative. And I'd seen bits and pieces, but I'd always been a WCW guy. And from then on, I was like, this is so much better. Like, it's just so much better produced. Even as a kid then, like, I didn't understand all that, but I just knew it was a better product. And I'd already sort of drifted away a bit from WCW. And from then on, every pay-per-view I could get, I got. WrestleMania 16 or WrestleMania 2000. I remember that. And that's when it really took off. So I'd always loved wrestling. I was always that wrestling kid at school that had, Goldberg shirts on and stuff like that. And, I copped a little bit of crap for being into wrestling, but not too much. And so, it's always been there, man. Like, and it's never gone away. There's never been any point that I've lost interest in it. I've always watched it. I've always read up on it. But it wasn't until I must have been about 24-ish. So, a fair ways after I'd finished high school. Yeah. Because I went and I did graphic design, and I explored my other passions, which is music and art. And I did a little bit of that. And then one day I just remember thinking, like, if I ever get the chance, I reckon I'd be good at wrestling. I just think I'd be good at it. If I ever got the chance, I'm going to do it, and I'm just going to see what happens. And it took a few years, and then I started looking up wrestling schools, and I was like, well, if I think I can do it, why don't I just do a bit of research? And so I got on the interwebs, probably dial up at the time, who knows? And I remember the first one I saw was AWF, which was down in Sydney. And I was like, man, I'm going to have to move interstate if I want to do this. Like, and I don't know if it's going to be worth it. I just don't know. So I didn't end up pursuing it because I just felt like there was nothing up here. And then looking into it a bit further, I somehow got the contact details of a guy named Mason Childs, who people would know better as Australian Wolf. All right. So he was wrestling for a company called PWAQ, PWAQ. And he invited me and another friend of mine to come down and try out, just have a day at training and see what we thought and whatever. I didn't have a great experience that day. So I went down, and there was no ring set up, which is obviously, being a mark, which I was at the time, I wanted to get in the ring. And when I got there and there's no ring and there's just mats on the floor, I was sort of like, oh, okay. But then for whatever happened through that day, I had a bit of a negative experience, and I went away thinking, what? If I'm going to do it, it's not with those guys. So I sort of just left it. And then it sort of went quiet a bit. And then I discovered IPW, which is interesting because that's where you're from, right?
Yeah, that's where I started. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found the sweatshop back when Hawk was running it. And we decided to make the trip down there just to suss it out and see how it was, see what the people were like. And we walked in there. First thing I saw was a wrestling ring. So I was like, tick that box. Okay, that's good. Very small little industrial shed. Yep. You remember the black bricks with the white brickwork. You know what I mean? Like, it's this image, this sweatshop image that's stuck in my head. And I was like, oh, this is what it's meant to be. Like, this feels right. And yeah, that's right. And Peter Ball, he was, to me, exactly what a wrestling promoter and a wrestling trainer should be. I could tell by how physically run down he was. Sounds bad, but like he had bad knees. You know, he'd been through the prime of his career. He was at the twilight of his wrestling career, and he had that experience, and you could just see that. And straight away, he took a shining to us, and he was very nice, very welcoming, but also he just threw us in there. You know, he was like, no, you can try it. You can do it. You'll be fine. And it was like, whoa, okay. I remember getting in there, him showing us a lock up, showing us a few holds on the outside of the ring and stuff, and then going, you know what? You guys can stay around. You jump in with this more advanced crew. There was guys like Renegade and Blackjack. I don't remember seeing you there at that time, but I remember meeting Tony Storm, just lots of people that are still in the industry here and in other places. And they're like, all right, take a hip toss. And I was like, I don't even know how to bump. Like, I don't even know what a bump is. So, all right, let's go. And we just did it. But unfortunately, that was short-lived as well. So I live on the sunny coast, and it's a 3.5 hour drive to the Gold Coast. And at the time, I didn't even have a car. Yeah. So I was relying on my friend to get me there, right? He ended up giving up. So we went for 5 weeks, I think, maybe twice a week. And we got a few good sessions in, but it was only just over a month. And then he decided he could no longer make it because the travel was too hard and just too expensive, or, you know, just logistically too difficult. So he stopped going, and that was my ride. So I was like, shit, now what am I going to do? I kept paying them for like 4, 5, 6 months after that, but I never went to another session. Okay. So I was paying them to give myself a kick in the ass and go, right, if you're paying them, get down there and get the training, you know, and I just couldn't physically get there. So that was, to me, like the one day at PWAC, I didn't count as any wrestling experience. My initial start came with IPW, which I think a lot of people are surprised about, because obviously I didn't get on shows or anything like that. But that was when I first stepped into a ring. That's when I learned a lot of I still use some of the stuff that I picked up from Peter to this day. You know? Yeah, that's how it all started. And then just fast forwarding, I think it was another year and a half after that. The most random person that I know, had nothing to do with wrestling, didn't even like it, just said, oh, I've seen this article in the newspaper, have a read. And he handed it to me, and I was like, oh, wrestling, okay. Jimmy Sparks opens up wrestling school. Oh, okay. Send him an email. So I sent an email to this email address, and turned out to be Jamie, who come over from New Zealand with Island Boy Sai, and they were starting up their own fed, one here, one in Townsville. And I was the first person to email him, and he goes, well, I can't start a class until I get 10 people to do it. And we started with 4. He couldn't get 10. And he went, you know what, we're just going to do it anyway. So it was me, a guy named Ben Ayers, a Dutch kid named McKeel, real tall, lanky, sort of awkward kid, and a real young kid called Robbie. So I was looking at these guys, and me and Ben were sort of the only, like, obviously physically able to do it. And we were like, all right, well, who knows where this is going to go? Let's just do it and have some fun. So we started training upstairs at a PCYC on a gymnastics floor, so one of those sprung floors, until we got kicked out of it because we destroyed it. But that was the start of QCW. So you mentioned QCW earlier. Queensland Championship Wrestling was where I really started to sink my teeth into wrestling. So I trained there for about 5 months before they ran their first show. And then I was featured on every single show up until they closed doors 3.5 years later. Yeah. That was my start.
So that was it. You were loyal to the core there. It was convenient. It was brand new. It was something you could sink your teeth into, and you were there for 3.5 years. Now, after that 3.5 years, you've had many matches under your belt. We got to work together. That's around the time when we met each other. What was it like for you? Because I remember that curtain call show, and you touched on it earlier about you wish we had got to have our blow-off match then and there, but we got to do it later down the track, so that didn't matter in hindsight because we got to do it anyway. Would have been cool to do it then, but we got to do it eventually. But what was that like for you, being one of the originals, being one of the first 4 to start in that company and 3.5 years later be dealt with the cards of, hey, we're going to shut the doors. What was it like for you? Were you able to sort of live in the moment of that show, or did it kind of sink in for you about maybe a couple of days, a week later? How was it for you? Take me back to that curtain call show.
I remember, now for people who aren't in the wrestling business, there's what you see on the show and then there's what goes on backstage.
Yeah.
There was a series of events that happened maybe 12 months, maybe more, leading up to this event. And what happened is, for whatever reason, the locker room got fractured. So we were a real tight family-like unit and we all worked towards a common goal. And basically stuff went down and it was never really the same again. So to me, when I got the phone call and Jamie rang me and I could tell he was pretty upset about the whole thing, but he was like, look, I'm going to shut down. How do you feel about it? And I said, good. I said, because it's not what it should be and it wasn't what it could be. And I felt like if he thought it was the right thing to do, it was his company, for him and his family, then how could I argue with that? You know, and I was I wasn't over wrestling. I was over the bullshit. Sorry for swearing. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but I was over it. So I was kind of like, whatever, man, you know, if that's what you want to do, that's cool. You've got my full support. We'll do whatever we can to make it easy on everybody, you know, whatever it takes. And he goes, well, I'm just going to shut the doors, like I said earlier. And I said, well, I think you should do one final show for our fans and for us, you know, like so that we can all farewell it properly. Yeah. So then came up with the idea of doing curtain call. Now, here's the interesting thing about this, and I don't think many people would know it or have spoken about it, but originally he didn't want anything to do with this final show. He said, all right, I'll provide the ring and the venue. You guys do it. It's your love letter to QCW. And I was like, sweet, because I've always loved the idea of doing booking and stuff and never really got the chance to. And I thought, you know, if I can just put together this final show with a handful of guys, some of the main eventers and, you know, the long stay members, we got together and we started to put together these matches, and it was like, wow, this is going to be good. All these little things will get people back in and just, you know, a nod to everything that we'd done over the last 3.5 years.
Yeah.
But then the politics came in and certain other people who, you know, we spoke about this before. We're not on this podcast to throw people under the bus or talk negatively about anyone. So I'm not going to name names or anything like that. But the control was taken away from us to the point where I went, you know what? Have it. I don't care. Just tell me what I'm doing. We'll do it and then we'll be done. And that was my attitude, because when that control was taken away, I was like, well, this is my passion and you just shit all over it. So that happened, and then all the matches got changed. Some people just went, I don't even want to do it anymore. There was people involved in the show that had never even been on a QCW show before. And I was just like, you know, and honestly, looking back on that card, there's not a lot of matches I was happy with, not content-wise, just the fact that they were even on the card. And the match that I was meant to be in, the triple threat match, 13 and Mickey Too Fat, actually got canned, which really pissed me off, because I was in that match instead of in a match with you, you know. And then when certain people pulled out of that and that got changed, I was like, well, why didn't I just do this thing with Flash? I think you ended up wrestling Sweet Ass, didn't you, that night? Yeah,
we did. Yeah, it was Sweet Ass and I can't remember which way. I think it was an open challenge thing, but yeah, we ended up being us two. Yeah. So that show just wasn't what it should have been. It wasn't what it could have been. And that, honestly, it was just, it was serendipitous, because that is exactly what QCW had become. It was just not what it could have been, and not what it should have been. And I remember just thinking at the end of it, because it was a hell of a main event. It was a fatal four-way. It was for the North Queensland Championship and the South Queensland Championship. It was anything goes. And it was myself, 13, Rip Riley, and Triple X Rated. And we beat the shit out of each other. It was just crazy. And watching back, a few people have said, I've never seen a wrestling crowd get up out of their seats and follow the action around like they did. Because they did. They would just, everyone was like, whoa. And to me, that match was a great send-off for the company.
not the show, but that main event was just exactly what we needed to just leave it all in the past, and that's what I did. After that, I left wrestling for about 9 months, I think it was, so the better part of a year. Yeah. So to me, that was like, all right. Yeah, I put all this time and effort into building up this company. Not that we got to amazing heights or anything, but we spent a lot of our time, a lot of our bodies, a lot of our energy into building this company into what it was. And then it was just gone. So was my passion. I was like, I'm just going to tap out for a while. Yeah.
So you're burnt out at that stage? You're just with all the politics and the backstaging and the chopping and changing and the unforeseen closure of that company. You were feeling like, hey, I need to cool down for a while. Is that what it was like for you coming out of that show?
I think burnt out is the appropriate term. I was just done. I was sick of, like you said, the politics and all that, and just I felt like I was spinning my wheels at the end. I was like, okay, we're not really progressing anymore. And then shut down. It's like, definitely not progressing now. And I was just wrestling in general because, like, I think you would definitely be able to agree with this, but wrestling, especially backstage, can be very toxic at times. There's a lot of egos. There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of, even if a lot of it's inadvertent, there is a lot of backstabbing and stuff like that. And a lot of talk. And it was just, I'd had enough. So I'm done. I'm out. I'll see you later. And that's what happened. So I actually stepped away. And you said earlier, QCW was convenient for me, and it was because it was local. I took a few extra bookings after that I had already agreed to. Mm-hmm. So I honored those commitments. I wrestled for PPW, Pacific Pro. I think I did a couple of matches with them. And then after that, I clocked out and I just sort of retreated. I got off Facebook, I got off all social media, and I just went back to basics, and I was living life outside of wrestling for quite a while. Yeah.
Did you feel like, looking back on that situation now, do you feel like that helped? That was the right call to make for you at that time? Or do you think, hey, I should have stuck around? Because it sounds like from what you're saying right now, it sounds like that decision for you was something that not what was wanting to happen, but you taking time away is what you needed to do.
Yeah, I think it was because I was pretty bitter at the closure for the reasons behind it, which I won't go into because they're not my reasons and they were personal reasons.
Sure.
So I was sort of just like, a lot of people's dreams and passions were involved in this, and that just got pulled, and that's life. That happens. But yeah, I needed to get away because I was pretty angry. Like I didn't speak to Jamie for a long time, not because I blamed him, but I didn't speak to anybody from that scene for a long time because I was just, if I'm out, I'm out. Everybody go and do their own separate things. And I think honestly, to this day, a couple of them have come back into the fold, but for a long time, I was the only one left from that company. And then when I stepped away, none of us were wrestling. So, and I think Jamie was really gutted with that. He was like, oh, none of my boys went on after this, and obviously things have changed now, but yeah, it was definitely the right call. It was time for me to get away, clear my head, fall in love with wrestling again, which is pretty easy to do when you do love wrestling as much as I do. So it was the right call.
So you've taken the time away. You feel like it's the right decision. What happens in your life then? So you've done a few of those sporadic bookings, but you've said, hey, I'm gonna hang up the boots for a little while then. Does life seemingly outside of wrestling start returning to normality for you, or was there other things in your mind that you wanted to try and achieve outside the world of wrestling?
It was more just falling into a daily grind routine. I mentioned earlier, I love my art and I love my music, so I always have other talents to fall back on, but I've never pursued either of those as a career. So really, honestly, I just got a job and I just worked and, just living life as you do, nothing to speak of. I got a new relationship. I found a girl that I loved and that was blossoming. So that was nice. Life as usual, man. Like it was nothing it's not like I went, hey, you know what, I'm going to change careers and I'm going to make something of it. It was just get away from that and just get back to basics and just live, you know. So that's what I did. That's what I did up until, and this is where things get interesting again, wrestling-wise, UPW, which was a Gold Coast promotion, right?
Yeah.
So they decided to ship up to here on the sunny coast because I think the market was a bit oversaturated. There may have been some political issues and some heat there. I'm not sure what happened or what provoked that move to come up here. But I got the call saying, hey, are you interested in coming back to wrestling? And my answer, without even really thinking, was, hell yes, I am. And that was a realization where I was like, I am ready for this. It's time to get back in the ring. So, yeah.
So you've taken the 9 months off. Was it at the end of the 9 months that you seemingly got the call or the call out or the reach out from UPW at that point? And did you immediately sign on or was there some hesitation? So was it at the end of the 9 months that they reach out to you, or did you just decide, hey, I'm going to take 9 months off and see where I'm at?
Well, I never put a time frame on it. As far as I was concerned, I was done with wrestling.
Yeah.
I'd stepped away from the Brisbane scene for my own reasons, had stopped taking bookings, and I had been asked from other places, do you want to do this, want to do that? And I was like, no. But yeah, I honestly had I didn't go out of my way to make it happen, put it this way. I got a call, I guess it doesn't matter if I say who it was, but 13 was getting involved in the running of things at UPW, and he was putting things together, trying to see who was available just to, you know, start the ball rolling. And I think I was one of the first guys he called. And I don't know whether he knows me well enough to know that offering me a possible championship was going to sweeten the deal because he knows that I like carrying a belt. But he's like, yeah, I got these ideas, Rara. And I said, yeah, look, sign me up. Because I respect him a lot. And I thought if he's involved, then I can more or less expect good things. You know, like I know he's passionate about it, and I know he has wrestling's best interest in mind. And I thought, yeah, you know, I'll do it for him. Like, honestly, through my career, it's a common theme. If he asks me to do something, generally I will do it.
Yeah.
Just because I know I can trust him. And sorry, can you hear that dog?
Yeah.
My dog's going off. Yeah, so he rang me up and he got me over and we had a face-to-face meeting, which is how I'd prefer to do things if I can. Yeah, and sure. We were talking and he was just laying it out for me and what he wants from the company and, you know, bringing wrestling back to the sunny coast, especially because there was nothing here before us. And then when QCW closed, there was nothing again. And there's a market for it here. You know, there's a lot of people around and there's not a lot to do. So I was like, I think it's going to be good. Let's do it. And I put my stamp of approval on it and rest is history.
All right, guys, you're going to have to stop the podcast right there. That is part 1 of the conversation with the good friend, Ricky Rembrandt. Make sure you follow the podcast at LMBC Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And hey, it's also on Twitter at LMBC_podcast. I'll see you next week for part 2